When Jo arrived at Lone Oaks Hospital, the sun had just begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows of trees across the half-empty parking lot. She barely noticed the hour as she hustled inside, anxious to see Earl after the long drive. She clutched the collar of her blood-stained blouse higher on her neck. Inside, the long halls were quiet, save for rhythmic beeps and the low murmurs of doctors and nurses. Jo followed the signs on the wall to locate the room number the nurse had given her. The door had been left open a few inches, and she pushed it wide, carefully not making any noise. She halted mid-step at the sight of Earl, pale and still, sleeping in a bed. "Oh, my sweet Jo." An older woman, slumped in a chair beside the bed, shoved to her feet, crossed the room, and wrapped her arms around Jo. "I'm so glad you're here." "Frankie." Jo sank into her embrace and breathed her in, her lips trembling as the familiar sense of hay, horses, and lumber, home, enveloped her. Frankie, now 65 years old, was Earl's oldest friend and a retired veterinarian. She was also the woman who'd stepped in 20 years ago when Jo's mother had abandoned her, leaving her in Earl's care. Having never known her father, Jo had been left at Lone Oaks Crossing with Earl when she was 7 years old, and Frankie had always been more like a mother to her than her biological mother had ever been. If looks were anything to go by, Frankie hadn't changed much over the past few years. Brown hair mussed, cheeks dirt-streaked, and jeans and t-shirt well worn. Frankie was still as laid back and real as ever. She'd never stood on ceremony, and never bit her tongue, especially when it came to Earl. Jo hugged her tighter. "How is he?" "He's okay. They've run some tests, and the doctor will have more information for us tomorrow." Her hand smoothed over Jo's hair, her whisper tickling Jo's ear. "He's been asking for you." Jo turned her head, rested her opposite cheek on Frankie's shoulder, and studied Earl's features. "He's able to talk?" "Some," she said softly. "He gestures to get across the rest." Frankie's chest vibrated slightly against Jo, an amused tone tinging her voice. "His mind's working good, though. He managed to give a male nurse the finger when the guy had trouble sticking a needle in his vein for the IV.